When literature is viewed through the lens of memory, it emerges as the exemplary art of memory. Literature serves as the repository of a culture's memory, not merely as a passive recorder, but as a collection of commemorative actions encompassing the accumulated knowledge and texts of a culture. Writing, in this context, becomes both an act of preserving memory and a fresh interpretation, imprinting each new text into the collective memory space of a culture. The engagement with existing texts within a culture, reflected in every new text, whether through convergence, divergence, assimilation, or repulsion, establishes a reciprocal relationship with the cultural conception of memory. Authors draw upon both ancient and contemporary texts from their own or other cultures, referencing, alluding to, quoting, paraphrasing, and incorporating them. This interplay text, termed intertextuality in literary scholarship, demonstrates how a culture, one rooted in a literary tradition, constantly redefines and retranscribes itself through its written works. Literature, as the prominent representative of recording within a culture, shares similarities with other mnemonic paradigms, particularly the ancient art of memory. This tradition, originating from mnemotechnics, emphasizes the role of images in aiding recollection and remembering, similar to the use of imagery in literature to evoke memory and meaning. The legendary origins of mnemotechnics, attributed to the Greek poet Simonides Melicus, depict a mythical narrative that underscores the importance of memory in restoring order in the face of catastrophe. Simonides, the sole survivor of the banquet hall collapse, the lost order through inner visualization using images similar to letters to restore recognition and meaning. This myth symbolizes the transformative power of memory, turning mourning into a technique of restoration and preservation. Central concepts originating from this myth include forgetting and remembering as mechanisms shaping culture, the storing of knowledge as a survival strategy, and the role of witnesses or texts in preserving cultural experience. The competition between writing and mnemotechnics mirrors the co-presence of memory and death, highlighting the intricate relationship between memory, representation, and mortality. Cicero and Quintilian, in their retellings of the legend, frame mnemonics as a blend of imagination, order, and imagery. They advocate for techniques such as spatial arrangement and visualization to aid in the memorization of texts, underscoring the practical applications of mnemonic principles in literature and beyond. Cicero, in his interpretation of Simonides, has a novel perspective on the relationship between imagery and writing. He correlates the key components of mnemotechniques, namely locus, that is place, and imago, image, with the wax table, sera, and the letter, littera. These correlations, wax tablet representing mnemonic place, letter representing image, are pivotal in his argument. In De Oratore, Cicero illustrates that the work of memory necessitates the formation of an inner image representing an invisible or absent object, which becomes the visible sign etched into the memory place. These images are stored in mnemonic space similar to letters inscribed on a writing tablet. As a text integrates itself into mnemonic space between other texts, it inevitably reshapes that space, creating a textual repository by loci and imagines as described in Simonidean mnemotechnics. Just as the wax tablet is replaced by the architecture of memory, this architecture is subsequently supplanted by the textual realm of literature. Texts traverse memory spaces and become embedded within them, enriching the mnemonic space for subsequent texts. The connection between mnemotechnics and literature is rooted in the dual meaning of imago as both an image of memory and a product of imagination, which serves as the creative force in literature. The interaction between mnemic imagination and poetic imagination is complex, with literary imagery often invoking mnemonic imagery. Imagination and memory share parallels in representing absent objects with images, blurring the lines between truth and falsehood. Philosophical and aesthetic treatises throughout history have highlighted the interplay between fantasy and memory, often emphasizing their collaboration rather than strict dichotomy. Parallels exist between the art of memory and writing as a mnemonic act, particularly evident in intertextual procedures. When a text references other texts, it can encompass entire works, genres, stylistic elements, narrative techniques, motifs, and so on. The intertext serves as the element of another text that is absorbed, quoted, distorted, or re-semanticized. The memory of a text is shaped by its intertextuality as each act of writing traverses the space between existing texts, preserving their referential character in relation to semantic potential and cultural experience. This intertextual rooted in cultural memory informs various models of intertextuality such as participation, troping, and transformation, highlighting the intricate relationship between mnemonics and culture. Participation in literature refers to the dialogical sharing of cultural texts through writing. Troping, as understood through Harold Bloom's concept of the trope, involves a struggle against precursor texts aiming to surpass, defend against, and eradicate their influence. In contrast, transformation involves appropriating other texts through a sovereign exertion of control, veiling, distorting, and merging them in a manner that may be esoteric, cryptic. All texts participate, repeat, and constitute acts of memory while containing cryptic elements. They make use of mnemonic procedures, sketching out spaces, imagines, and imagines agents. The text itself serves as a memory place and architecture, indebted to transformative procedures that may be covert or demonstrative. To describe intertextual references, metonymic and metaphorical types must be distinguished. Metonymic appropriation occurs through contiguity, while metaphorical reference involves similarity. Quotations, anagrams, and synapses exemplify metonymic intertextuality, blurring the borders between texts. Metaphoric reference allows the previous text to appear as an image within the new one, evoking the original while distorting it. Troping, participation, and transformation, with their focus on metonymic and metaphoric procedures, blur the distinction between positive and negative semantics. Intertexts based on similarity dissolve the meaning of the text, while those based on metonymy seem to preserve it. Authors such as Pushkin, Akhmatova, and Mandelstam exhibit a metonymic tendency, while Dostoevsky, Belly, and Nabokov showcase both metonymic and metaphoric intertextuality. Literature's mnemonic capacities include representing and transmitting knowledge, system formation, with less systematic approaches. Literature codes and discusses various forms of knowledge, becoming a bearer and transmitter of historical knowledge and forming intertextual bonds. Fantastic literature, especially in Romanticism, serves as a mnemonic device recovering and reviving forgotten or repressed knowledge, such as arcane traditions. Authors draw on other texts, recollecting stylistic strategies, plots, motifs, and philosophical problems, transmitting the structure and semantics of the genre itself. Authors of literary texts often articulate their own theories of memory, drawing from philosophy or literary theory. Avant-garde movements such as Italian and Russian futurisms declare the death of established artistic and literary traditions to forge new paths. Russian formalism, corresponding to this, views literary evolution as a series of alternating systems, advocating for discontinuity and disruption as the driving forces. In contrast, the Acmeist movement, represented by figures like Anna Akhmatova and Osip Mandelstam, embraces the world culture as an imperishable treasury to be incorporated, repeated, and transformed into text. Akhmatova and Mandelstam's poetry exemplifies the participation model of intertextuality, which involves reviving past texts through sharing and repetition. Writing becomes a process of remembering, as Akhmatova beautifully expresses, "When I write, I remember. When I remember, I write." Mandelstam elaborates on this further, equating invention with remembering in poetry. He develops a theory of cultural memory influenced by Henry Bergson, conceptualizing the past as becoming and culture as macro consciousness projected into the future. Mandelstam's understanding of time, inspired by Bergson's concept of pure duration, emphasizes the heterogeneity of memory and culture. While Bergson suggests a mechanism of suppressing unnecessary elements in memory, Mandelstam's Acmeistic memory opposes this, aiming to preserve science against utilitarian suppression. For Mandelstam, writing is immersed in duration, preventing gathered cultural experiences from acquiring a fixed identity. Memory, enshrined in writing, transcends individual mortality, safeguarding cultural experience against oblivion. In literary techniques such as embedding other texts, mixing diverse texts, or rewriting known texts, the aim is not to evoke an untouched literary tradition or showcase erudition through quotation. Instead, the focus lies on the semantic explosion that occurs through the collision or interfacing of texts, generating aesthetic and semantic surplus. Intertextuality thus plays a crucial role in literature's mnemonic function, provoking and sustaining the memory